You ever think classic sci-fi movies from the 1940s are just black and white relics, slow, stiff, and hopelessly out of date? Hold that thought. The wildest ideas in science fiction started brewing back when your grandparents were still kids, and some of these films are more unpredictable, ambitious, and downright weird than anything you'll stream this year. Want to know which atomic age gems are still packing a punch? Stick around, because some of these old-school flicks will blow your mind, and maybe even make you question what you thought you knew about the golden age of cinema. Dr. Cyclops 1940. Imagine a mad scientist deep in the jungle, surrounded by weird machines and radioactive gadgets, eyeing you through Coke bottle glasses. And he's not just running experiments on lab rats. He's got his sights set on you. Welcome to Dr. Cyclops, a fever dream where humans are shrunk down to the size of action figures, tossed into a world where every bug and puddle is a life-or-death obstacle course. Directed by Ernest B. Schoedsack, the genius behind King Kong, this film is a technicolor explosion of wild ideas and surreal visuals. The story kicks off when a team of scientists heads to Peru to check up on the mysterious Dr. Thorkel, who's been dabbling with radium and God knows what. Things take a nosedive the minute they realize their host is less scientist and more deranged puppet master. Before you know it, our heroes are zapped by Thorkel's shrink ray and launched into a jungle that now looks like the Amazon on steroids. Suddenly, a simple puddle is an ocean, and a house cat is a prowling nightmare. What makes Dr. Cyclops hold up? It's the inventiveness. The special effects still dazzle with clever trick shots and oversized sets. You actually believe these tiny people are fighting for survival. And Dr. Thorkel, played by Albert Decker, is a villain you love to hate, eccentric, cold, and so obsessed with his own genius that he barely notices he's lost his humanity. Every scene is pulpy, colorful, and surprisingly intense, especially when you realize how early this was for sci-fi effects. Dr. Cyclops is a reminder that sometimes the oldest ideas still have the biggest bite. 1 million BC, 1940. Forget science lessons. 1 million BC is pure prehistoric spectacle. And you know what? Sometimes that's exactly what you need. This movie throws you into a Stone Age world where volcanoes erupt on command, dinosaurs stomp around like oversized reptiles, and early humans swing clubs while running for their lives. The plot is simple. Two tribes, one savage, one peaceful, battle for survival while nature seems determined to wipe them out. Victor Mature and Carol Landis star as the beautiful but doomed pair caught between love and lava. Here's the real kicker. The dinosaurs aren't stop-motion models or rubber suits. They're real lizards dressed up to look like monsters, wrestling on camera while pyrotechnics pop in the background. Animal rights folks today would have a fit, but in the 1940s, this was Hollywood's idea of top-tier special effects. The visuals, from volcanic eruptions to cave collapses, are over the top and totally committed, turning the screen into a wild, chaotic playground. Sure, the science is laughable, but that's part of the charm. The film doesn't care about facts. It's about mood, atmosphere, and non-stop danger. The costumes are fur bikinis and wild hair. The romance is earnest, and the action is relentless. 1 million BC is a popcorn adventure that influenced everything from The Flintstones to Jurassic Park. When you're in the mood for pure escapism, this is the prehistoric adventure that still makes you believe the impossible can happen. Who needs accuracy when you've got this much fun? The Invisible Man returns, 1940. How do you top a classic like The Invisible Man? Easy. You bring in Vincent Price and crank up the paranoia. The Invisible Man Returns is a masterclass in suspense and sci-fi terror, with Price playing Jeffrey Radcliffe, a man wrongfully accused of murder who escapes prison using a new batch of that notorious invisibility serum. What starts as a desperate bid for freedom quickly spirals into a story about madness, power, and the slippery slope between hero and monster. From the get-go, the film is bursting with tension. Price's invisible presence haunts every frame, sometimes heroic, sometimes unhinged, always compelling. The visual effects are way ahead of their time, with floating objects, half-visible outlines, and shadowy footsteps that still look impressive. The more Radcliffe uses the serum, the more the edges of reality blur, and the film makes you feel every moment of his unraveling mind. It's sci-fi as psychological horror, and the fear isn't just about what you can't see, but about what you can't control. This sequel doesn't just rehash old tricks. It deepens the story, asking what happens when a good man is forced into a corner. Does power always corrupt, or can someone resist the darkness? Price gives the Invisible Man a tragic soul, turning him into both victim and villain. With clever storytelling, tight pacing, and a pitch-perfect ending, The Invisible Man Returns still stands as one of the sharpest sci-fi thrillers of its era, a movie that refuses to let you relax, even when there's nothing on screen at all. The Devil Commands, 1941. Ready for something truly eerie? The Devil Commands takes the classic mad scientist trope and gives it a supernatural jolt. Boris Karloff stars as Dr. Julian Blair, a grief-stricken genius who's desperate to reach his deceased wife from beyond the grave. Instead of turning to mystics, Blair fires up the lab equipment, giant electrodes, buzzing wires, the works. His plan: use brainwaves and machines to tune into the afterlife, turning science into a seance. It starts out as pure heartbreak, but things spiral into full-on horror. Blair's obsession leads him down a twisted path, recruiting a sinister medium and a band of reluctant helpers to carry out his experiments. The imagery is classic Gothic: stormy nights, shadowy laboratories, and machines that pulse with unearthly energy. Every scene drips with tension as Blair's experiments grow more desperate and the line between science and sorcery blurs. What makes this film stand out isn't just the chills, it's the emotional core. Karloff gives Blair a tragic depth, making you root for a man who's clearly losing his grip but won't stop chasing hope. The movie asks tough questions. How far would you go for someone you love? When does science cross the line into madness? The answer is never simple, and The Devil Commands isn't afraid to leave you unsettled. With its mix of pathos, horror, and wild invention, this is one early sci-fi flick that still feels deeply personal and surprisingly haunting. King of the Zombies, 1941. Take a detour from serious mad science and buckle up for one of the wildest B-movies of the decade. King of the Zombies is what happens when World War II paranoia, island mysteries, and The Walking Dead crash together in a whirlwind of spooky fun. When a plane crashes on a remote Caribbean island, a group of Americans stumbles into a world of voodoo rituals, hidden labs, and of course, zombies under the control of a sinister scientist. Don't expect modern zombies gnawing on brains. Here, the living dead shuffle in a trance, obeying their master's every command, with a creepy calm that's somehow more unsettling than outright gore. The film's real magic comes from the atmosphere, flickering candlelight, secret passageways, and an island that feels cut off from reality. And then there's Mantan Moreland, whose quick wit and comic timing light up every scene, balancing the scares with just the right dose of humor. Is it perfect? Not a chance. The production is scrappy, the sets are sometimes wobbly, and it leans on plenty of 1940s cliches. But that's half the fun. King of the Zombies is a roller coaster of old-school entertainment, with enough twists, chills, and offbeat characters to keep you glued to the screen. It's the kind of film that proves you don't need a big budget to make sci-fi memorable. Just guts, creativity, and a sense of adventure. Man-Made Monster, 1941. Sometimes, sci-fi horror is about electricity, not just monsters. Man-Made Monster puts Lon Chaney Jr. in the hot seat as Dynamo Dan, a carnival sideshow performer with a talent for surviving electrical shocks. Enter Dr. Rigas, a scientist with more ambition than scruples, who sees Dan as the perfect test subject for his experiments in turning humans into living powerhouses. It starts with a few mild shocks, but quickly escalates into full-blown body horror as Dan is transformed into a human conductor, glowing, dangerous, and increasingly less human with every jolt. The magic here is in the pacing. The story is tight, barely an hour long but never wastes a minute. You watch as Dan, initially good-hearted and trusting, slowly becomes a pawn in Riga's ruthless quest for control. The scenes where Dan, eyes glazed and movements stiff, lumbers through stormy nights with lightning flickering across his skin are unforgettable. The effects may be simple by modern standards, but the atmosphere is charged, literally and figuratively. But what really sets Man-Made Monster apart is its heart. Chaney brings a tragic vulnerability to Dan, making his transformation both scary and deeply sad. There's a clear warning in here about unchecked ambition, blind trust, and the cost of treating people like science projects. Even decades later, the film's raw energy and emotional punch haven't dimmed. Man-Made Monster is a crackling, underrated sci-fi gem that proves you can get real sparks from a little electricity and a lot of human drama. The Wolfman, 1941. When it comes to icons, the Wolfman runs with the pack. Sure, it's remembered as a monster movie, but look closer and you'll see it's pure science fiction at its core, a story about genetics, curses, and the things that lurk in our DNA. Lon Chaney Jr. brings pathos and pain to Larry Talbot, a man returning home only to get bitten by a mysterious wolf and doomed to transform under every full moon. The makeup, designed by Jack Pierce, is legendary, each hair painstakingly applied to Chaney's face as he morphs from man to beast. But it's not just the transformation that's chilling, it's the psychology. Talbot's curse is presented almost like a medical affliction, debated by doctors and analyzed by scientists as much as mystics. The fog-drenched moors, the ticking of the clock, and that ominous silver cane become symbols of fate you can't escape. Is it madness or mutation? Is the real monster inside us all? For all its supernatural elements, The Wolfman is about family, guilt, and the fear of what we might become. The film set a standard for all werewolf stories to come, blending horror and science in a way that still feels fresh. When you watch it now, you're not just seeing a man grow fur and fangs, you're seeing a genre find its depth, its shadows, and its heart. The Wolfman still has a bite, and it'll haunt your imagination long after the final howl. The Mad Monster, 1942. Mad science gets a howling upgrade in The Mad Monster, a pulpy gem that takes the Frankenstein formula and injects it with wolf's blood, literally. Dr. Cameron, a disgraced scientist, decides to get revenge on his former colleagues by transforming his simple-minded handyman, Petro, into a deadly man-beast. The result is a film soaked in fog, cheap sets, and wild ambition, all delivered with a sense of urgency that keeps you hooked. What makes The Mad Monster pop isn't its production values, it's the fever dream energy. George Zucco plays Dr. Cameron with the perfect mix of creepy calm and unhinged obsession. Glenn Strange, the future Frankenstein's monster, brings a tragic innocence to Petro, making the monster's rampages both terrifying and oddly sad. There's a low-budget magic to the way the film piles on atmosphere, creaking doors, shadowy swamps, and science experiments that should never see the light of day. And then there's the subtext. Beneath all the monster mayhem is a story about exploitation and the consequences of playing God. Cameron isn't just tampering with nature, he's using people as tools, and the film makes sure he pays the price. The Mad Monster isn't slick or sophisticated, but it's never boring. It's a raw slice of early American sci-fi that proves sometimes the wildest ideas come in the cheapest packages. Don't be surprised if you find yourself rooting for the monster by the end. The Ghost of Frankenstein, 1942. You can't keep a good monster down, and in The Ghost of Frankenstein, the legendary creature is back, this time with Lon Chaney Jr. in the bolts and stitches. But the real twist here isn't just about reanimating dead tissue, it's about the quest to control life, memory, and identity. When the villagers of Frankenstein's hometown finally get fed up and try to destroy the monster for good, what follows is a roller coaster of mad science, brain swaps, and double crosses. Bela Lugosi returns as Igor, the hunchbacked schemer with a plan to put his own brain into the monster's body. The result is a wild ride of lightning storms, underground labs, and moral questions that get darker with every reel. Can evil be transferred, erased, or just moved around? Is the monster a blank slate or a vessel cursed by his creators? The film never gives easy answers, but it delivers the kind of gothic spectacle Universal was famous for. The effects are classic, Tesla coils crackling, thunder rumbling, and shadows dancing on stone walls. But what makes The Ghost of Frankenstein endure is its commitment to the bigger questions. It's a film about guilt, legacy, and whether you can ever really escape the sins of the past. Even now, its frantic pace and moody visuals grab you, and the monster's struggle to be more than the sum of his parts feels as timely as ever. Universal's monster saga kept evolving, and this chapter still electrifies. The Ape Man, 1943. Just when you think the mad scientist trope has run out of steam, the Ape Man swings onto the scene with a plot so wild you'll wonder if the filmmakers were the ones experimenting in the lab. Bela Lugosi, king of horror and cult classics, plays Dr. James Brewster, a man who transforms himself into a human-ape hybrid after years of reckless experimentation. The only way back? Harvesting spinal fluid from unwilling volunteers. Yeah, you heard that right. From the opening scene, the movie oozes that shadowy, noir-inspired atmosphere. Lugosi is magnetic, chewing scenery and snarling in a way only he can. The transformation scenes are pure 1940s pulp, with makeup effects that, while basic, still carry a certain eerie charm. Every time Brewster lumbers through his darkened mansion, you feel the tension ratcheting up. But what really sells it is the blend of camp and conviction. The Ape Man knows it's bonkers, but plays every beat straight, refusing to wink at the audience. That makes the story, as outlandish as it is, feel strangely real. There's something almost tragic about Brewster's desperation, and the lengths he'll go to cure himself. And then there's the ending, a final twist that comes out of nowhere, just to remind you that early sci-fi could be as playful as it was unsettling. Whether you're in it for Lugosi, the mad science, or just the sheer weirdness, The Ape Man is a 1940s sci-fi classic that still gets under your skin. Phantom of the Opera 1943. Step aside, opera fans, Phantom of the Opera isn't just music and romance. It's pure old-school sci-fi horror wrapped in technicolor. This version, with Claude Rains haunting the Paris Opera House, puts its own twist on the Phantom legend. Forget the mysterious masked loner lurking in the shadows. This Phantom is a wrong genius, a violinist who turns to chemistry and untested experiments to repair his ruined life and ends up disfigured and obsessed with revenge. What sets this version apart isn't just the music or the sets, though both are stunning. It's the way the story leans into early science fiction. The Phantom's transformation is the result of lab mishaps, reckless ambition, and the kind of experimental spirit that powered a whole generation of sci-fi tales. When he emerges from the shadows, part monster and part tragic scientist, the line between horror and science fiction blurs beautifully. You can practically smell the grease paint and old paper in these sets. The film's lush, saturated colors give every scene a heightened reality, and Claude Rains nails the role, making you feel every ounce of pain, genius, and twisted hope in his character. Is the Phantom a monster or just a man destroyed by his own drive to create? Phantom of the Opera is a reminder that some of the greatest monsters in cinema are made, not born. It's a dark, grand, and deeply weird sci-fi classic that still echoes through movie history. House of Frankenstein, 1944. Monster mashups weren't invented by Marvel, they were perfected by Universal, and House of Frankenstein is the original cinematic crossover. This is a movie that throws all the monsters into the blender and hits frantic. Dracula, the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster, and a mad scientist all locked in a battle of betrayals, lightning storms, and unholy science. Boris Karloff returns, this time as the maniacal Dr. Niemann, who's got a resurrection agenda and absolutely zero boundaries. The plot? Let's just say it's not about restraint. Niemann escapes from prison, stumbles onto Dracula's coffin, finds the monster frozen in ice, and drags the Wolfman along for the ride. If you think that sounds crowded, you're right, but that's the fun. Every set piece is bigger, every escape more impossible, every confrontation dialed up to 11. The movie throws logic out the window and invites you to revel in pure, unfiltered monster chaos. But there's more here than just spectacle. House of Frankenstein is a love letter to mad science, forbidden experiments, and the age-old question, what if all the monsters joined forces? The effects are bold, the pacing relentless, and the tone perfectly aware of its own wildness. Watching now, you realize these mashups pave the way for the mega franchises and crossovers that dominate pop culture. This is the original cinematic universe, and it's still a riot. The Flying Serpent, 1946. There's weird, and then there's The Flying Serpent, a wild slice of B-movie sci-fi that proves the 1940s never ran out of strange ideas. Picture this. An eccentric archaeologist discovers an ancient Aztec god serpent living in the desert near a small American town. Instead of alerting the authorities, he uses the monster as his own personal weapon, sending it out to destroy his enemies. You don't get more gleefully bonkers than that. The effects are pure drive-in delight. Stop-motion wings, rubbery claws, and enough fog to cover half the state of New Mexico. But the film's low budget only adds to its charm. There's a playful sense of, let's see what we can get away with, that keeps every scene entertaining. Each attack is staged like a myth come to life, mysterious, terrifying, and totally unpredictable. And at the center of it all is George Zucco, playing the mad scientist with just the right amount of scenery-chewing energy. Is it silly? Absolutely. Is it fun? Even more so. The Flying Serpent is the kind of sci-fi oddity that makes you wish Saturday afternoons at the movies could last forever. It's proof that sometimes you don't need big stars or big budgets, just a big imagination and a monster with wings. The Monster Maker, 1944. Finishing the list with a real mind-bender. The Monster Maker is equal parts medical thriller, mad scientist tale, and existential dread. Dr. Igor Markov, played by the ever-creepy J. Carroll Naish, is obsessed with a concert pianist and concocts a plan so wild only a 1940s sci-fi flick could pull it off. He injects his rival with a rare disease that causes hideous physical changes, all to bend the pianist's will and gain control of his life. This is old-school body horror at its finest. No high-tech gadgets, just a twisted mind, a laboratory full of bubbling beakers, and a cold-blooded plot that makes your skin crawl. The makeup effects, for the time, are genuinely unsettling, transforming the film's hero into something monstrous and pitiable. The pacing is taut, with every scene dripping with tension and paranoia as Markov manipulates everyone around him. But here's the real kicker. Beneath the outlandish plot and shadowy labs is a sharp little commentary on ego, power, and the ethics of medicine. The film never lets you forget that even the most brilliant minds can cross the line when blinded by obsession. The Monster Maker is a perfect closer, a reminder that sometimes the scariest thing in science fiction is what happens when ambition goes unchecked. Think 1940s sci-fi is boring. Think again. These classics are proof that wild ideas and fearless filmmaking never go out of style. Which one's your favorite? Drop your answer in the comments. Hit subscribe for more wild movie adventures and share with a friend who still doubts black and white magic. Who knows what forgotten gem you'll discover next?